Good morning, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to your favorite little American soccer podcast, at Stateside Footy. Quite honestly, I'm having a good morning. I don't know how you guys are doing. I am your guy, Steve Silver, and of course, joining me today is my Irish brother from another mother. It is Dave Harris of the Irish Hotspur. Dave, good morning. How you doing, my man?
Nah, good morning. I'm keeping very, very well, my man. We've had a good chat, before he came on here talking
Sure.
about, different leagues and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm having a good day, my man. Thanks very much for having me. And look, we had a good conversation on Adrian and
Yeah.
Drew's channel last night as well. So yeah, no, it's good. It's good. Let's
Yeah,
keep it
no.
going.
And I do appreciate it. I know we only have limited time, so we're going to get right to it. But before we do, hit your like and subscribe buttons. Dave, I got to say, man, I do apologize because apparently I can't tell time. You know what I mean?
Honestly, we had the same problem last time, didn't we? With the clocks going forward at
Yeah.
different times. We were only talking about it. Why can't they just have one for the whole world? You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I didn't know you guys had a daylight savings where your clocks go forward. I just assumed that it was, maybe it's naive. I just thought it was an American thing. I didn't think you guys had daylight savings time in Ireland. Turns out I
Yeah.
was wrong. Well, all right. So the
Man.
Tottenham Hotspur had a match on Thursday as the first leg of the Europa League, and we're going to get into that as well too. Of course, we're playing Wolves tomorrow, which is a very interesting match. But we're going to get into some news and notes. And the first thing that popped off after the match on Thursday, it turns out there's a mole. There is a mole in the Tottenham Hotspur camp. And of course, Ange Postecoglou addressed this in his post-match press conference, and I think it was surrounding Wilson Odegaard's injury. And it turns out that that report that the hamstring injury ended up being absolutely a fugazi. It was fake. It was much to do about nothing. And of course, we saw that on Thursday that he was actually in the match day squad. Now he didn't get actually into the game, which made me think like maybe there's some substance behind this injury. But Ange Postecoglou says no injury. It was apparently it was just a normal day of rest. What do you make of this? First of all, I don't know how you feel about this. What do you make of the fact that there's a mole? And is there anything to this?
Look, it's not good, right? Leaking stuff, but on the day of the game, I do think when you're releasing stuff like that early, you are sort of helping the opposition manager to a certain degree, right? Plan for certain things, which I don't think helps. At the end of the day, a lot of teams, it's not just in football, it's a lot of right across elite level sports. Teams want to keep things in house. They want to deal with things in house. They don't want to try and give other teams a competitive advantage or leaking news, even leaking what they're doing behind the scenes in terms of training techniques and all that sort of
Right.
stuff. A lot of people are trying to keep their secrets in house. Now, look, we can say there wasn't an injury to Odegaard, but the fact that he didn't come off the bench, I think maybe alludes that he wasn't 100% right, because the report that came out said that he felt tightness and he was going for a scan. Now, it didn't say that he was going to be out, long term and stuff like that. So I think there's probably legitimacy to that report. And the fact that Postecoglou has come out now and he's gone mad about and saying there's a mole, I think also they know that the report was true. So someone in there is leaking very good information. But the reality is, with how elite these clubs are now, with the amount of people that it takes working inside the club to make it operate, stuff is going to get out. It just is.
Yeah, I don't like it at all because one of the things that you don't want to do is undercut your manager, and it almost ends up leaving your manager twisting in the wind because he has match day preparations, and I'm sure Ange Postecoglou had 4 or 5 different starting lineups, and then all of a sudden you have to deal with news hitting the wire that one of your players, maybe one of your key players, is dealing with an injury, and you're absolutely right. It allows your opponent to set up on you.
The thing is, some people are getting the teams a day or two in advance before it's even announced. If they're getting it, you bet your bottom dollar it's getting to other clubs.
But it allows your opponent to set up on you without having the element of surprise. And that was one of the big things. That's one of the big things that managers like to do. They don't like to release any type of information whatsoever prehand. They want people. They want their opponent to be wanting to guess exactly what direction they're going to go in, right? And usually that's where that element of surprise comes in. But now all of a sudden you have this leak, and it forces Ange Postecoglou to potentially have to readjust to that, to a maybe to a situation or formation that he otherwise wouldn't have. And I don't know. I just think usually you get your injury report prior to the match, and all of a sudden to have this leaked, not even via a journalist. This is I don't know, man. I'm not a big fan of this, man.
It also comes down to who the leak is, right?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, who do you think it is?
I don't know. Look, I don't know. I have a feeling in my mind it could be someone like Ryan Mason, and if it is someone within that coaching team that potentially benefits if Ange goes,
right,
I think it's sabotaging the guy, and that's completely wrong. I don't know. Soon as I heard it, straight away Mason went straight to my head, and I don't know why. I don't have any proof. No one's told me anything. No one's leaked. No one said, "Oh, this," no one. It's just as soon as I heard it, Mason started ringing alarm bells in my head.
So when I first heard it, I was thinking to myself, and that makes perfect sense, right? But that being said, I was like, it can't be Mason, because that dude's been loyal to the club for how many years now, right? And he's been given that caretaker spot a few times, right? So if Ange goes, if Ange doesn't go, there's a good chance that he might get it again. And I don't think it necessarily benefits him to be a leak. My first thought went to James Madison. I was like, that rift has come to a head, right? But then yesterday, I think it was in Drew's chat, somebody said it was Dragason's agent, and I was like, that makes sense. He was popping off of the mouth earlier this year.
Do you know what though? Right, the thing is, I know someone that lives in the same apartment block as Radu Dragason's agent, and he never tells him a thing that's going on at the football club, and he knows he's a Spurs fan. They've spoke together, and that, he knows he's a Spurs fan, and not once has he given him any information about what's going on.
Interesting. So the agent is not the guilty perpetrator of the league. Interesting. Yeah, no, it was, but I don't know. Like I just for the life of me, somebody that has been loyal to the club is Ryan Mason. It just didn't. Like for me, it would be like that would be such a massive betrayal, right? But Ange Postecoglou has come out and essentially said that he has a pretty good idea of who the leak is. So you would probably naturally assume whoever the guilty party is probably going to get their walking papers sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Derma, good to see you this morning. I hope you're feeling well.
Oh, yeah. I'll be late for me funeral. I swear I would be. I would be late for my own funeral. I know I would be. I'm sorry, I'm a few minutes late.
Oh, you're good. So we were getting into some news and notes, and we are talking a little bit about the mole that popped up. Ange Postecoglou has alluded to it. Quickly, your thoughts on
it's me.
Your thoughts on the? Oh, it's you.
It's me. Okay. I'm the leak.
That new jumper, Dermo.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, even got my channel name on it, which is
where'd you get that made?
Kind of cool. I got it made off a website, Cool Shop 66. And I'd send you the link later, Dave. You can put your channel logos on it and stuff. They let you design your jumpers. So yeah, it's got a massive cockerel on the back as well with the "To Dare Is to Do" in Latin. So yeah, I got two of these made. So I got my white one and this one. I agree with Dave. I got my own aspersions. Well, I do agree with Dave, but my own aspersion is Ryan Mason. I just
why do you think that? Why do you think that?
I just think I don't know. I just got this gut feeling it's him. I don't think it's any of the other coaching staff. I don't think it would be anyone in the medical department. And the only one that knows about the news and every team news and all this. I mean, it's something come out the day of the game that Odebear was injured with a hamstring injury.
It's got to be directly coming from the training pitch. That's
what it has to be.
My guess would be if the team selection is being leaked and injuries and that are being leaked, I do think it's got to come from the training ground.
And I feel with all the pressure Ange is under at the moment, and I wouldn't be surprised if Ryan Mason's in there turning the knife.
Probably feels like he could do better right now.
Yeah, and he probably could do, and this is why I think he's turning the knife. And I think it's a shame because Ryan Mason could have been a manager of ours in the future if he kept his powder dry, learned under all these managers, and learned his craft. I think he would become a good manager, but I think he shot himself in the foot. Now, it might not be Ryan Mason, but my gut's telling me it is, and that's why I'm putting the blame.
Have you guys ever considered that it could also be Daniel Levy leaking information? Have you guys ever considered that? And the reason why I asked that question is because it has happened before, where a manager's own owner would leak sensitive information to drive that firing even home. There have been multiple times in U.S. sports where a manager has been very polarizing with the fans. Now it's a little bit different with Tottenham Hotspur, but that being said, for personal reasons, an owner will undercut his own manager, giving him even more ammunition to fire a guy. Especially to get certain fans on their side for it as well too.
But see, I don't think Daniel Levy wants to fire Ange Postecoglou though, because the way I see it, Ange Postecoglou is sheltering Daniel Levy from a lot of stuff at this moment in time. Look, for me, I just think it's coming from the training pitch. And, I look at the coaching staff. I think there's a few that's come in under Ange that, are his guys. I wonder, is it some of the, a Mason, who's the goalkeeper that's a trainer now, used to be an ex-goalkeeper, Birch. I just wonder, is it any of these guys? But the reason why I don't think it is the owner is that Ange said he's narrowed it down to who he thinks it is. He wouldn't come out and say that if it was Daniel Levy. Do you know what I mean?
I hear what you're saying. I'm just trying to cover all bases here because it's an interesting story. But Dave, you brought up something interesting yesterday on Spurs Die Hard, and it is pertaining to the captain Son Heung-min. And the conversation was leading to whether or not maybe Sonny has lost some pace. But you brought up something very interesting about how teams are now defending him, and it was pertaining to the fact that where if opposing managers are telling their central defenders or even their six to step up into space to cut away the inside move of Son, you have a very good shot of beating Spurs, because obviously Dominic Solanke has not panned out this far, and Brendan Johnson, and I will say it till the cows come home, the fact that I think his development has plateaued a little bit. So my question to you is, that was, for me, that was a very interesting. That was actually a poignant point. That's something that I didn't think about. And the interesting thing about it is, as I watched the season progress, I mean, I was just kind of looking at it that, maybe he's past his peak, or maybe this is a system that doesn't necessarily fit Son to a T. But that being said, I didn't necessarily think about that. And I guess my question to you is this something that you have noticed over the course of this season, or was it last season? When did you come to this conclusion that opposing managers have actually figured out the riddle?
Yes, I've come to it recently. Look, I've always questioned the notion, is Son done? And the reason why is I look at Son and I look at Mo Salah, right? They both shared the Golden Boot 2 years ago. They're both the same age. And look at one's output for Liverpool and look at one's output for Tottenham. Now, I get that Salah's playing in a better team, better players. That's obviously going to help him to a large degree. But you can't tell me there's that much of a drop-off in decline from this season where Son's at compared to Salah. So I've always had my doubts about that. And, I listened to the likes of Tuck Muller after the Frankfurt game, and he sort of explained what the game plan was and stuff like that. And it just got me thinking, if I am an opposition manager, if I stop Son, I have a great chance of winning the game of football. And because in years gone by, right, Kane was the guy that everyone was focused on stopping, block up the centre, put bodies around him, try and dislodge the ball from him, which freed Son up, which means when Son's one-on-one, he's going to absolutely kill that defender with a bit of skill or a bit of raw pace and stuff. Now, look, I do take into account, I do think he's lost a yard of pace. I do think he has lost a yard of pace. But, when I'm looking a lot this season, and I go back and I look at games and highlights and stuff like that, it does seem to be a common trend that when Son gets the ball, they're very quick to get people over that side of the pitch and block up that inside route, cutting inside all the time, and I think it's a deliberate ploy. Why wouldn't you? You know, because I think Son benefited largely from Kane taking the attention on the football pitch. Whereas now that Kane's gone, everyone knows Son is our most lethal forward. He's our best player. So if you stop him, you know Dom Solanke ain't going to do that. And he's not a striker that can pick up the ball, fashion his own chances. Johnson can't create chances. So if you stop Son, you stop Tottenham going forward. And I genuinely think that's what we're seeing happen a hell of a lot this season, rather than Son actually, you know, just having this demise and not being that player. You know, you look at players that retired, you go and look at Legends matches, they still got it. You know what I mean? They still have it. And I still think that's the case with Son. I just think one thing that no one is talking about is that teams doubling up, you know, setting up a purpose plan to stop him, which stops Tottenham. And that's why I always bang on about you need someone quality up front. You need someone quality outright, because then in effect, what it actually does, it makes them worry about it, which means their resources are spread out more evenly, which means there's more room for everybody. But when you've got such a deficiency on the right and such a deficiency through the middle, you put all your resources onto one side, block that up, stop it. You keep Tottenham down to a bare minimum. You go up and with our defence, you've always got a hope going the other way. And I think that's just exactly what we're seeing on the football pitch.
You know, Dermot, it's interesting, right? Because I always looked at it as a not necessarily a technical ability, but a system deficiency. Because under Pochettino and even under Jose Mourinho, you know, to me, Sonny always played that false nine position, playing off the shoulder of Harry Kane, where defenses were so keyed in on Harry Kane, making sure that Harry Kane couldn't kill you, that he was able to make runs. And especially in 1v1, even when he was caught out, he was still able to have an outlet. Now a lot of that has to do with the fact that, you know, technical ability across the front line is not there. But in your opinion, does this system take away the strengths of Sonny, considering how Ange wants to use him? And generally speaking, he's usually hugging the touchline. So, you know, trying to cut in and getting on his right foot is a little harder now, you know, compared to where he was 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think this system or this philosophy helps Sonny. I think also he is missing Harry Kane. There's no question on that.
Yeah.
I think he's missing that link-up play that he hasn't got with anybody else since Harry Kane left. He hasn't got it with Richarlison. He hasn't got it with Solanke. So yeah, I also agree with Dave. Look, every player does lose his pace a bit as they get older. It's the first thing to go. But I just feel that this system and the way Ange is playing doesn't suit Sonny. It doesn't come to his strengths, if you know what I mean. And I'd say it again, he's missing Harry Kane. He's missing that link. And once he has that connection with the striker, and that striker, like Harry did, just take, as Dave said, defends around and give Sonny that space, he's away with the horses. But also his finishing over the last 18 months hasn't been great either. How many chances has he had this season that years gone by Sonny would have put away? That would have been in the back of the net. And
they're very few and far in between to what he used to get, though, as well.
Yeah. But I just feel he's lost a bit of yard of pace, and I just feel we need to use him more as an impact substitute. He's not a player for 90 minutes anymore. And I feel you got half an hour to go on the hour mark. Bring Sonny on. He's got his energy. The defenders are a bit tired. He can go at them. I feel Sonny using him for 90 minutes. I don't think he's that player anymore. I think you've got to look at him and play him a bit differently now. And try to look at which is the best way for me to get the best out of Sonny. And that's for me, is to come on the hour mark and just say, right, do your bit for half hour. And I feel the captaincy is also weighing him down. Somebody said it the other day, but I agree with that. I don't think the captaincy suits him either.
The reason why I bring it up, Dave, and Dermot, I tend to agree with you at this stage of his career. It all depends on who the next manager is going to be, and it just exactly how they deploy him. I would assume determines exactly what type of skill set we're going to get from him. But Dave, the interesting thing about that point from last night was the fact that it made me think about the season in a whole. And just exactly how Tottenham Hotspur like to attack out of the back as they're setting up their build-up. Generally, they like to go down the left-hand side. And I've seen defensive overloads.
They don't trust Solanke or Johnson.
Yeah. And I continue to see, how they like to attack down the left-hand side. They all, I see defensive overloads to the left all the time. It's interesting. As far as I'm concerned, man, it's interesting that you brought that up, because it literally made me think back to, certain key matches and just how Ange likes to build out through the left. Generally speaking, if there's such a high overload, they'll try to go to the right, but generally speaking, they start off building out the left. So I just wanted to give you your flowers on that one last night, because it really kind of had me stuck for a few hours thinking of it.
I appreciate it, lad. Appreciate it. I can make good points from time to time. The rest of it's waffle, but
I'm
from
just
time
saying.
to time I can stop people.
So, the Tottenham Hotspur had a match on Thursday. It was the first leg of the quarterfinal. I don't know how you guys felt about this one, but I thought it was a missed opportunity. For the life of me, I still could not figure out why they came out the way that they came out, knowing the magnitude of this first leg, the ability to put themselves in an advantageous position for the second leg. And it also alleviates pressure for this Sunday as well, too. Having that ability. And I don't know how you felt about this one, Dermot, but I thought they came out sluggish. It did not have the intensity of what we saw on the Sunday prior against Southampton. Now, again, I get it. It's Southampton. But that being said, coming off what I thought was a little bit of embarrassment against Chelsea, they kind of redeemed themselves in that first half against Southampton, but also creating that momentum heading into that first leg. You would feel like that momentum would carry over. They would have that, I guess you can say that, that enthusiasm heading into it. And right from that first whistle, within the first 6 minutes, they concede a goal. And what I consider an ugly goal. For the life of me, I can't understand, the lack of enthusiasm heading into it, or the lack of motivation, putting themselves in an early hole, and then having, getting into the game, they redeem themselves. But in the second half, they do ratchet up the pressure, but they can't finish their chances.
Yeah, look, the first 20 minutes wasn't good at all. We both said that. It was absolutely terrible. I thought the first 20 minutes they were dreadful. I don't think it was for the lack of trying. I think the occasion got to them. And I think a few times this season, some of the games like away to Galatasaray and away in the last round, it's just the occasion gets to some of these players and they freeze and they just don't know what to do. And I think going to go down sort of sparked something in some of their heads. Well, come on, this is a quarterfinal. Let's get about it. And then they grew into the game. Second half, we should have scored 3 or 4. We should have scored 3 and 4. We all know that. We just didn't take our chances. But you said to me after the game, Steve, and I think you're right. You said something along them lines. It's not a bad result. Where I was more disappointed. It felt like a loss to me. And you had the attitude of, well, do you know what? It's not a bad result. And thinking back on it and looking at the game again and thinking back on it, I don't think it was a bad result. I think it's still a good result, and I think we can do a job in Germany. I think this team is beatable. I think Frankfurt, okay, they got the fans are going to go mental, but I think you nick a goal there, you silence that crowd within the first 20 minutes, you do what they did to us. And do you know what? I think we can beat them. I think we can get through. And I think once we get through, I think we can get to the final. I really do and win the thing. But look, first 20 minutes was not good enough at all. For whatever reason, the players do not like playing under pressure. They don't like playing under any intensity. And the occasion gets to some of these players. And that's been the story of Tottenham since Mourinho. Conte said it. Players don't like pressure. And it's been proved yet again. We don't like pressure. And it takes Ange to say something at half-time, or it takes them to get a bollocking. They're waiting for that half-time bollocking to actually improve. Well, why not just give them to them at the start of the game, get it over and done with, and let them go out? And Ange's supposed to be this great manager of great... We've seen the videos of Ange's pre-match talks. They fire me up. They fire Dave up like... We know what he can do at Celtic. We know what the players run through a brick wall for him at Celtic. Some of these players, the likes of James Maddison, are throwing them under the bus a little bit. And I called him a moaning mini on Thursday. Every 5 minutes, he was moaning to the referee. Well, get off your ass. do your job, do the job you're supposed to do, and create chances for us instead of moaning. Put your energy into performing. So that's my sort of that's sort of a good answer. I know I've gone around a bit, but
No, you're good,
I
man.
hope that was good enough for you. Sorry.
Well, see, Dave, what drives me crazy is Sonny, our captain, has played in very high pressure Champions League situations in the past. He understands exactly the magnitude of European nights. And then you have the likes of Christian Rimmer who has that experience as well too. You have Rodrigo Betancourt who has that experience as well too, playing in different leagues but playing in high pressure situations. So it's not like this is unfamiliar territory. And the fact that you have a manager who probably does have who probably knows how to fire up his troops. But that being said, you have a captain that has that type of experience in his locker. To come out that flat and concede that early. I don't know about you, but that in a situation like this, it always gets me angry.
No, look, I think it's inherent at the club, to be quite honest. Slow starts under Conte were a problem. They were a massive problem under Conte, and people put it down to the amount he made them run before games and stuff like that, saying, I think he made them run like nearly 7 kilometers in a warm-up before a game, and people put it down to that. They're starting slow because they're bollocks, this, that, and the other. And I don't think that's the case. I think Conte tried to do that to try and get them up for the game, make sure that their head's clued in and, the task ahead and stuff like that. And I just think it's not a manager-specific problem. I just think it's inherent at Tottenham Hotspur. Look, there's no pressure on winning or losing. Conte told us that. Harry Kane's told us that. It's sort of like, go out there, try your best and see what happens. And I think that attitude is what kills us at the end of the day, Steve.
It's interesting because over here in the United States, there's a term called players manager, where usually there are rigid managers that are very military-like, where there's a certain set of expectations, and that is the expectation, right? So there is no pregame fooling around. There is no shaking your opponent's hand. It is strictly down the line. These are the expectations. This is what I expect of you. But then you have players managers that like to keep it loose, that like to keep it fun, that that the expectation is that you can be and act exactly what you like as long as you show up and play a hard 90. And sometimes that leaks into the game because they're a little too loose. They're a little too fun. And so, the question that I have is, knowing Ange Postecoglou's history, he's not really a disciplinarian in that mold, is he? I guess I've never seen it.
No, I don't think he is. And that's something where I think maybe, especially at this level, maybe he could become a little bit more of a disciplinarian, sort of set the standards to a large degree. Say, look, this just isn't acceptable under any level,
Yeah, and Wayne Bonner right here brings it up, and I've said this on multiple times, that this mentality comes from the top, right? So this comes from Daniel Levy, and when you're switching managers every 2 years, yeah, that tends to happen. But that being said, they're still in this tie. I mean, it is 1-1. This is not AZ Alkmaar down 1 coming back to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium trying to get a huge performance out of one player to ensure that your passage. But that being said, it is essentially it's 0-0 going into the second leg. I guess my question, Derma, is how important is this game against Wolves that is going to determine that performance on Thursday?
I think it's very important. I think it is very important how we played on Sunday. If we get a win, that gives us great confidence going into Thursday. And I think it gives the players more minutes that have been out in their legs. It's important to get all 3 points for all different types of reasons. I know there was a question asked yesterday in the press conference to Ange, why don't you wrap all these players up in cotton wool? Well, then you're just basically giving up on the league. And you can't do that. We don't want to be 14th in the league. We want to try to get up that league as far as we can. And then winning breeds confidence. Confidence comes from winning. So if we get a win on Saturday and a good win on Sunday, tomorrow, and beat Wolves, say, by 3-0, we go and have good weeks of training. We'll go into that game on Thursday full of confidence. And it's all about mentality. It's all about Ange getting the right things out of these players, the right mentality. Yeah, Rain is right. It does start at the top, but it also comes from the players themselves as well. They've got to have the right attitude to go, right, we're going out and we're going to beat this team. Leaders can lead, but players have to be willing to follow. And when players don't follow either their manager or they go out with the intentions of, I don't feel like it today, which has been an accusation thrown at Tottenham players over the years. I've seen them in many podcasts that players have come out and said, do you know what? I didn't feel like it today. That is the mentality. It's been going on for years at Tottenham. And if you're playing for that shirt, you're playing for that cockerel and that badge, you go out and you give 110% every game. So Sunday is so vital, because if we lose tomorrow, then everyone's down. Everyone is angry. And then it just brings a breed of an atmosphere around the stadium where everyone is fed up. Ange out, be out again. There'll be all the things on social media. Get this man out of my club. There'll be questions about why is Ange still here. And I just feel tomorrow is so important. And yeah, I'll tell you what, Ricky 072, I'll just give you a little thing here. I am the most delusional Spurs fan around. Dave will tell you I am. So, well, at least we have the guts to come onto YouTube and make our opinions and come out and try to do shows and try to give up what we thought, instead of sitting behind the keyboard just talking waffle, basically. Sorry, Steve. Yeah. I didn't mean to say that. I just wanted to...
It's whatever. It is what it is, man. Ricky's entitled to his opinion, and if he wants to pop off, he's going to get it back. I mean, it is what it is. Like, you can't expect to talk without getting it back in return. But I will say this, Dave, my biggest issue with this upcoming Thursday, is I don't believe this team plays with a lot of confidence, and I don't believe they believe in the group. And of course, when you look at a historical context of European nights on the road, Tottenham Hotspur aren't exactly killers on the road when it comes to European nights. To me, that is my biggest worry, is that even regardless of how they perform at Wolves. Now, of course, I think we all hope that they go out there and blow Wolves off the pitch. But I don't think, I don't necessarily believe that this group in its whole has the ability to have that confidence carry over to a European night match on the road.
Look, I think it's a really tough act, going out there. That's why, I was trying to put so much emphasis on the home leg, saying that we need to, go over there with something basically to defend, the lead to defend, because, you look at our home record, down the years away from Europe, it's just shocking. Just absolutely shocking. Patros de Ferreira, Vitesse Arnhem, AZ Alkmaar this year, Galatasaray, the list goes on and on and on. It's shocking away from home in terms of Europe. And that's where, again, the mentality comes in as well to a large degree. I tend to find when we go away to these places, we get affected by the atmosphere and stuff like that. And I think we've made our job hard on ourselves. It's a real missed opportunity not taking that win at home and going away to the away leg. And I just think potentially our season could come to an end this Thursday. I don't want it to. Don't get me wrong. I want to try and go, all the way in this competition. But I just fear the worst Thursday night. I just think, even if you look at our away record this year, even in terms of the Premier League, London derbies, just away from home, we're piss poor in general, and that's where I think, we really are asking for, a touch of the gods Thursday night to go and do something that we have demonstrated we can't do in years gone by. It's a really tough ask.
Yeah, my biggest worry in this second leg is the fact that Frankfurt, especially in the first half, they were really committed to having players behind the ball, sitting a little bit in the low block, really trying to do their best to take away passing through the central areas. And it seemed to work pretty well in the first half, but in the second half, Spurs were able to open up some space and get some shots on goal. And as nice as that was to see, they couldn't finish those chances. And I would probably assume, being at home, Frankfurt is going to double down on that and make it even tougher, for Spurs to get in advantageous positions. And that's just my biggest worry, that, they missed their opportunity in the first leg. And a part of me in the back of my mind feels like that missed opportunity is going to come back to haunt them on that second leg. I really do. I think their ability to win this thing ended on that 1-1 draw.
Mm. No, look,
Yeah.
it's just as well. Like, you know, you look at their atmosphere out there. You know, their fan base is well renowned. You know, with the atmosphere they create. You know, we could sit here and pretend we're not going to be intimidated by the atmosphere. The players will be. They always are when we go away from home. After Vitesse Arnhem under Nuno, Davies came out and moaned about how loud the crowd was. I mean, you're playing away from home. What do you expect? You know, so it's clear that it does affect some of these players. You know, you just question, do we have the bottle for it away from home? I think the reason why we're here is because, you know, away from home against AZ, we were shite, you know, but at home, we've done enough on the night to be able to get through. And it's shown this in this competition that, you know, we do perform well at home in this competition, but away from home, we haven't. You even go back to Rangers, one of our worst performances of the season, away from home. Hoffenheim, I know we bet them 3-2, but we were lucky to get over the line that night as well to a large degree. So, look, it's a tall ask. And, you know, especially with a lack of leadership within the squad, it's an even bigger ask.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead, Dermot.
So, look, Dave's right. Look, atmosphere, we've always struggled with atmosphere. When Ben Davies said that night, I think we all went mad. It was so much, you know, you should thrive under that sort of pressure. You look at that. I mean, Dave jokes to me, calls me back to World War II, but you look at the great Liverpool sides of the 80s. And then winning the European Cup in Roma, at Roma, in front of a Roma home crowd, and they went on to win the European Cup, which is now the Champions League. I mean, that is probably one of the toughest atmospheres you can walk into in the 80s. Winning a major European trophy in somebody's backyard. I mean, and then players were there singing in the. Graham Souness tells the story that then Liverpool players started singing in the dressing room, in the tunnel. And it freaked the Italian team out, Roma out. They're looking at them thinking these players are going to be scared. And then they're singing whatever they're singing. And they're looking at them saying, they defeated them in the tunnel. They won the battle there and then. And with Tottenham, these players just do not... Everything Conte said in that press conference was right in one way or another. That players do not like pressure. They don't like being under pressure. But isn't that being a footballer? Isn't that what it's all about? It's all about pressure. Isn't that you have pressure in your own life? And especially being a sportsman, you have more pressure because you have the pressure to you have to perform. You have to, you're performing in front of thousands of people or millions of people. And players you either die or you grow from it. And these players don't grow from it. And I'm sick of it. I'm sick of every time we go away from home. Galatasaray, we wither away. We should have won that game, but we withered because of the atmosphere. We go to Germany. Players should be thinking, right, I'm going to use this in a positive way. I'm going to go out there. It's not going to bother me. I'm going to play my game and we're going to win. And that's why I keep going back to that game in the 1983 or 84, Liverpool at Roma, in Roma. That ground is full of Roma fans, Italian fans in the 80s. Intimidating atmosphere. And there's Kenny Dalglish, Graham Souness, all standing in the touchline, in the tunnel, singing. And they're singing, they're singing God knows whatever songs they like. You look at Dave knows me, Jack Charlton, and with the Irish side and under Mick McCarthy, with Roy Keane. You look at him in the tunnel before Arsenal playing Man United. Do you think he's bothered by the atmosphere? He's telling Patrick Vieira, I'm going to get you when I get out there. We don't have any of them players in our dressing room to say, right, F the atmosphere, let's go out and let's give it a go. We can win here. And we need leaders like that. And when you don't get leaders like that, then you're beaten already. If you lose, if you're going to have the mentality of, oh God, the atmosphere is going to get to me, you've already lost the game. You might as well not bother going out. And, and I hate players like that, but I know Dave has goated me for going back to yesterday, and I do like it. It's good banter, and I love it. But you look at them players, they didn't give a shit. You look at Graham Roberts or Graham Souness or Roy Keane, they didn't care who they were playing or what atmosphere they were playing. Roy Keane scored 2 goals to get Man United in 99 against Juventus. He was suspended to the final. Did that get him down? No, that inspired him. You look at Liverpool in 2005 against AC Milan, 3-0 down. Steven Gerrard gets a header. And, you know, the comeback's on. Liverpool win that game. You look at us as well when we were 2-1 down against Arsenal in the League Cup semi-final. Second leg. We went, they come to us, we beat them 5-1. It's all about players not crumbling. And today's players crumble under pressure. They don't like it. They want everything nice and easy for them, not laid out for them. I'm sorry, that's not football. You go out there, you play under pressure, and that's when you should be playing at your best.
Well, I'll just say this, and I get back to the fact that, you know, we have players that have that experience of playing, playing Champions League football. They have been in hostile environments before and have gotten results, right? So they understand exactly how this feels, and they know exactly what to expect in hostile territory. And for the life of me, I just don't understand, you know, how a team can come off an ass kicking 3 days prior and show up against a team that, I would assume that they feel like they can just show up and beat, and then just have that type of start. It doesn't inspire confidence moving forward, especially in that second leg. But, you know, Dave, I want to switch things up real quick because there was another name that that came out as a target, and I believe I believe it was Cunha from Wolves. Again, that name seems to be circling. When I look at my list of targets that have been reported, there's not really a lot of names that actually inspire me. And when I look at this team on the pitch, it has become clearer and clearer that the first thing this team should address is the number 9 position. You know, I know your position on Dominic Solanke, and I do believe that he can be an asset. But is this an issue of he just needs competition? Like he needs that guy pressing him in training, understanding that, if he does not fine tune some of his runs or his positioning where he can actually receive balls in the box. Is this just a situation where he needs to be challenged on the training pitch, or is this a situation where maybe he's in over his head?
Look, there's always an element, competition, brings out the best in people, right? So I think, you should always have competition. It's good. It keeps people on their toes. And, ultimately, the guy that gets selected, then he's going out there motivated to hold on to his position, right? That's the way it should be. But honestly, I just don't think Dominic Solanke is just cut out for it, to be quite honest with you. I think, we bought him off the back of one good season. Everyone points to, he scored 20 goals last season, but look at the other years in the Premier League and that he's had before, and he's never ever reached them numbers. It was an anomaly. Players can have a good season here and there, but it's doing it season in, season out. If we want to go and win trophies, Dom Solanke is not going to be the guy that's going to fire you to trophies. You've sold the best striker in the world. You've gone and got a striker that is used to operating down at the bottom of the Premier League or in the Championship. I mean, there's levels to this game. Scoring goals is the hardest thing to do in football. But not only that, I just think there's so much lacking in his all-round game, to ever be the guy that we need him to be. I think, there's merit to keep him around as a squad player, but I think we should be going out and trying to buy, put us, at the end of the day, received 100 million for Harry Kane. That automatically puts you in the bracket with the top strikers in the world. Why aren't you going and reinvesting that straight into another striker and bringing him in here? I've tried, when we were selling Harry Kane, I tried to highlight not only the problem it was going to cause Tottenham, but the issue it was also going to cause Son. But people kept on telling me, forget about it, Dave. Son's going to be the guy. He's going to take over this club. He's going to be up front. He's going to score all the goals. He's the man. He's the guy. Hasn't worked out like that. And I do think at Tottenham, we're more inclined to let our good players go and just say, go on, you want to go get out of the football club and not keep them here. And then we end up with players like Dom Solanke's, Brennan Johnson's and that, who reality is everyone's arguing whether they're good enough or not. The fact that there's even an argument over it tells you, no, they're not good enough. No one ever had to argue about Harry Kane's ability. No one ever had to argue about Son's ability. But we do with these guys. You got people cherry-picking stats to suit their narrative right away. shows you that these guys are average. They're just not good enough. Look, Dominic Solanke, his timings of the run in behind are absolutely piss poor. You know, last couple of games, there's been crosses going into the box, hasn't got on the end of any of them. Johnson has 16 goals by coming in and getting on the end of crosses, so they can be goals got by doing that. He hasn't shown that ability. And a lot of times when the ball comes into him to control it, move breaks down at his feet because he can't get it under control. It's taking him too long. There's no fluidity to what we're doing. When we had Harry Kane up there, it was put into him, one touch down in behind. There was fluidity to what we're doing. You know, and our attacking play is too slow, but that's because even Brendan Johnson the other night, ball comes out to him, no one around him, goes to take a touch, pings 10 feet up in the air. How's that even happening? And that's because you've got bang average players that just have no consistency to their game. We've got moments players. I'm sorry, it's not, you know, you can't win anything just on moments. You have to be consistent. And that's where I've continuously banged on about the quality of the front line. And not only that, it's taking its toll on some then, because like I alluded to earlier, everyone knows Dominic Solanke ain't going to fashion that or do much. You know, Johnson ain't going to do that. And so if you stop the main supply with your son, you've got an easy day at the office, and that's what we're seeing. And I think it's absolutely madness. You bring in an attacking manager, you sell Harry Kane, who's been the main source of goals and assists down the years. And not only that, but I'm talking about in moments like Thursday night, where Kane would be there, he'd step up, he'd make sure we go to Frankfurt with a 2-1 lead. You know, Chelsea, when we were losing 1-0, you know, under Conte coming into 9 minutes of the game, rises, puts a header in the back of the net, puts a point on the board. We've missed that ever since we've sold him. And we sell him when we go and bringing in Dom Solanke. It's absolutely madness. Don't get me wrong. Dom Solanke is better than half the name that the fan base was giving me at the time, where they're telling me Gift Orban, even though no one knew who he was. You know, everyone was giving the flavour of the month. Dom Solanke is better than someone like Gift Orban. But he's not good enough to bring us to where we need to go. Chelsea have been looking for strikers the last couple of years. No, they didn't go for someone like Dominic Solanke. Arsenal are struggling for strikers. They've never once looked at Dominic Solanke. Liverpool, you know, Darren Núñez and that, they still never went to pull the trigger on Dom Solanke. These, you know, the likes of Chelsea and Liverpool could have got him because he's been there before. You know, these clubs ain't going after him because they know he's not good enough, but yet we are. But this is the problem with Tottenham. You know, we sell a player on of quality, and all of a sudden, you know, you look at us, we're always buying in that position after that 2, 3, 4 times till we get it right again. It's a joke.
Would you have gone for Ivan Toney? Do you think Ivan Toney would have been a better buy than Solanke, Dave?
I think he's a better player. Yeah, I think he's a better all-round player. You know,
do you think he's more fox in the box? He will get you goals, like where Solanke's
good.
Toney,
no, Ivan Toney can play outside the box. Ivan Toney can score goals outside the box. He takes free kicks, scores free kicks. You know, cool as a penalty. Don't get me wrong. Maybe the attitude and the money maybe steers you off it a little bit. You know, Dom Solanke has got a good attitude, and there's a lot to be said for that in modern day football. But I do think Ivan Toney's a much better player. I think that's why Ivan Toney was getting England appearances over him as well at the time.
But, you know, my only problem with Ivan Toney is I just question his attitude in the way that Ange likes to use his striker. Right, that's, you know, that was one of the reasons why they preferred Dominic Solanke, because he was willing to do the dirty work that is being asked of this number 9, especially in the press. Right, and that's my biggest issue, was the fact that for what Dom Solanke is being asked to do, when the ball gets turned over high and teams are looking to counter, Dom Solanke immediately goes on the press to reassert to get the ball back, and so it's wasted energy. By the time Spurs get it, instead of breaking forward and committing runners, they almost have to slow it down for Dom Solanke to get back onto his run, to make his runs. And by the time that happens, the opponent already has 8 behind the ball, and it effectively kills the attack. So my questioning with Dom Solanke is whether or not he was actually a good fit to begin with. For exactly what Ange Postecoglou needs in a 9, and that's my issue with Ivan Toney, because I don't think he would commit. I don't think he would commit to it.
I know. I get what you're getting at. I mean, I look at Kyogo at Celtic when Andrew's up there, and I always thought Kyogo would actually do a good job in the Premier League. I just still believe that. I still do believe that Kyogo could come down here and do a good job because he knows Ange's system, and I think Ange made a mistake. And when he first came to Tottenham, he should have brought players in that knew his system from Celtic. A few players from Celtic who I think can play in the Premier League. I think Kyogo's one. I think the other player that played in the wing up there. Forget his name off the top of my head, but I think he would have suited us as well. Look, I agree with Dave. We should have gone after Ivan Toney because I think Ivan Toney is a better striker. He's a goal scorer.
Not
Where
even
Dom
Toney. We should have
Solanke-
went after Gyökeres. That's the guy we should have.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah, Victor
probably,
Gyökeres.
yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
But are we ever going to go after these players? No, we're not, and that's down to the recruitment. That's down to the recruitment office. That's down to the
Then why do
people
fans
that are
keep making the same mistake, saying the club need to take the money for these players, and then if they know they're not going to replace it, right? Because that was the whole thing with Kane: take the money, take the
Yeah, it
money, take
was.
the money, despite all the revenue
problem
sources
was
and everything else.
the problem was where Harry Kane was. He was into the last year of his contract. Now you've got two options. You either let him go, take a chance to get to January that he's going to like what he sees under Ange Postecoglou and he signs a new contract. But you get a chance to January where he goes for nothing. He goes for absolute nothing. He signs for another club. So you're sort of damned if you do and damned if you don't. But the point is, you should never allow it to get to that place in the first place. You should have brought in a manager. You should have brought in a system to show Harry, look, we are winning something. We are going to win something. This is the process. And I think Harry Kane had enough. I think he had enough of Daniel Levy. I think he had enough of the situation. And then, so if you've got a player that doesn't want to be there and says, I want to go, what do you do? What do you say to him? No, I'm sticking you to your contract. Then he goes for free in January, like Sol Campbell did back in the day. Then you get the uproar of that. Why didn't we not sell him in the summer when we could have got money for him? And we didn't get 100 million day for him. We already got 70 million because Bayern Munich still owes 30 million from that deal, which they haven't paid yet.
You're on mute, Dave.
You're on mute.
You're on mute,
And
buddy.
I just feel, I don't blame Harry for wanting to leave. And I really hope he wins his silverware this year. I think he'd done us a great service. I feel we've let him down. He didn't let us down. We let him down with Daniel Levy sacking managers every 18 months, not recruiting properly, not building a side. We had a chance under Pochettino. We reached the Champions League final. That was the time to rebuild and really invest hard into the team. And I think if we had done that, I think Harry Kane would still be with us today. But I just feel you get to that summer and any work and any business or any work in any business sense, you have a player on the last 6 months of his contract. He doesn't want to sign the contract. What do? Do you chance it to January where he could go for nothing? That he might like what Ange's doing and he might sign a new 2-year contract? Or do you, if he offered 100 million, do you take it?
And, no, take the risk. Get some balls.
Yeah.
So if Harry Kane went, let's ask you a question.
You don't let Harry Kane get away from your club.
Take some risks.
Yeah, you do not let Harry Kane get away from this club.
I agree with you, by the way. I'm not disagreeing with you. I do agree with you. I agree with what you're saying. I think they should have done. I think they blinked. I think they just blinked too early. It's like playing poker. Bayern Munich pokered them out of it. They bluffed, and they fell.
It's the same situation with Cudi Romero. Right there is a lot of talk and links about him leaving this summer, but there under no circumstances should they let a player like with Romero leave. Right? You know if this is an issue of money, then that can be remedied easily. Right? And Dave, I know that you're up against it. You just got a couple more minutes before you have to.
No, you're all right. You're all right. Go on. I'm here.
Fair enough. All right. So
I'm just going to run to the toilet quickly, lad. I'll be back in 1 sec.
So I look at this team right now. Okay, Derma, I look at this team right now, and I look at the pieces that are in place. It's not a bad team. There are young cornerstone players that you can build around, and the only way that you can build around is making sure that certain players stay at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. I look at Vicario, who's like 26, 27. I look at Udogie, who's 23. Mikey Van de Ven, 24. Romero, I believe, is 25. Pedro Porro, I believe, is 25. Dejan Kulusevski, 24. Maybe you can add Dominic Solanke to that core, but the reality is there is a core of young players here. Archie Gray, Lucas Bergvall, who are going to be cornerstone pieces. You had Jed Spence, who has now played himself into a cornerstone piece. They're the pieces that are there that can help this club kick on, but it's the final 3 spots of this 11 that are badly needing playmakers.
Yeah.
Badly needing playmakers.
Yeah,
right?
it is.
Here's the issue though. If you're a Cudi Romero and you've been seeing this now for a couple years, where you know that you can kick on and win a trophy or even contend for the Premier League, and you're seeing Dom Solanke, you're seeing Wilson Odobert, you're seeing Young Min Huck. Instead, and then you look and you see what Arsenal's doing, you see what Man City's doing, getting Marmoush in the January transfer window.
Yeah.
What effect does that have on the current players who are actually playing their asses off? Like what is the motivation for that player to stay, knowing that there's a good possibility that knowing that how good their team is and what the effect of having just a few more good, skillful playmakers come in and really, really kick this team on. What effect does that have? What is Romero thinking, sitting back watching this? Like, why the hell should I resign?
There's an old saying. Look, football is all about taking chances. It's all about, do I stay or do I go? Do I stay because I think we're going to achieve something? Nothing's ever guaranteed in football or in soccer or football or any sport. Nothing's guaranteed. And I'm a massive Formula One nut. And it's like a driver moving from, say, Mercedes, like Hamilton moved from Mercedes to Ferrari. He's taken a chance that car is going to be the best on the grid. He's taken a chance that he's going to have a better car than he did the year before at Mercedes. And with QT he's got 2 years left in his contract. He's thinking, is this Tottenham team, with the added additions of a couple of players, is it going to be the team that's going to bring me silverware? But we've never been a club that's bought the right players. The recruitment, it goes back to recruitment. Ange wasn't backed in January. Ange wasn't backed in the summer. Now, you can put that down to Lang. You can put that down to Scott Munn. You look at the first transfer window we had under Paratici, when under Postecoglou. Look at the players Postecoglou brought in. Young, exciting players that were built up. And you look at our under-21s as well, Mikey Moore. Some of them are ripping it up on loans. So we do have the talent there. Integrate them into the first team. Start using them. But I think with football, it's all about chances. You either believe in what you're doing, you believe in the project, you believe in the manager, you believe in the club you're playing for, or you're thinking this club's going nowhere. I'm effing out of here, and it goes somewhere else. But the grass isn't always greener. He could go to Real Madrid at Atletico Madrid and absolutely bomb the place out, and Tottenham then go on to win silverware. But it's chance. It's all about sport. It's about chances. You make a decision for the next 2 to 3 years of your career. Is this the best place for me? Is this the best place for me to win silverware? And I'm sorry, I'm going to say it again. People will follow money. If somebody we're doing this podcast, right? And Dave says to you, Steve, right, Steve, he says, I'll offer you, say, 50 grand to come on and come on to my channel. Weekly basis, 50 grand a week, right? Sorry, Dave.
Are you game, Dave? Because I can go for that.
You're not that tight. I know. I've
never seen 50 grand in my life.
No, but do you know the point I'm making though? And I do. Say, Steve, I offer you 100 grand a week. You're going to go for the 100 grand a week because you're going to follow the money. It's human nature. People 100%. Will follow money. But footballers should also look, what is the project? How's this project going to spin out in the next 2 to 3 years? And you are right. We're only 2 or 3 players away, but them 2 or 3 players could be the players from the under-21 teams that we can bring in. Mikey Moore, and players like that. So we may not have to spend money because we've got the talent there. Dave's followed the under-21s all of last season. He's better at talking about it than me, to be fair. But we do have to. Yeah, you still have to spend money, but we do have the talent there also, Dave, as well, with the youngsters that are there. We have the talent there. You buy a few quality, experienced players, you add them into this group, you gel it all together, and I think you've got one hell of an exciting team. If you add it all right, with the right manager, the right investment, and then you add it in. We've got a back five already sorted. You put Jed Spence, Porro, Van der Ven, Romero, Vicario. There's your back five. There's your foundation. You put Burville and Bentacle in that midfield with a really good number 10. Probably put Kulu in that number 10 role. And then you get yourself three front players, a really top striker that's going to get you 20, 25 goals, which you do need in the side. And you get two wingers. You got Odebear, who I think is a very excited young player, and put Yuck on the other side. And you look at that team. That team there, I think, is a trophy winning team. And Ricky, please, man, you're just embarrassing yourself, man. Just go back and have your hot cocoa and your marshmallows. We're not Spurs. Just go away, man. Nobody wants to hear your garbage.
The crazy thing, Dave, is the modern footballer is an interesting beast. I know a few players here in the States, top level footballers here in the States. And I was just curious, and I always ask them the first time after introductions, and I'm talking a little bit. The first real question I ask these players is, "What's your motivation as a footballer? Is it championships? Is it trophies? What is it that you play for?" And every single player to a man says, "Money. I want to be able to utilize whatever playing time I have to make the absolute most money that I possibly can to make sure my family blah 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 blah." Trophies are just a byproduct of getting that big contract. And I will say that as far as Christian Romero is concerned, that is his top priority. I still contend the real reason why James Maddison and Brendan Johnson came to Tottenham Hotspur is because Spurs outbid for their services to bring him in. 100%, I definitely believe that. But this is a situation where if you understand the player's mentality, and the fact that a dude like Christian Romero wants to be paid as a top 10 center back in the world right now, that is his motivation. I guarantee you these problems go away. And I will also say that in the case of Harry Kane, I guarantee you if Spurs came over the top and just made him one of the highest paid players in the league, if not the highest paid player in the league, chances were pretty good that his problems would have gone away as well too. Like I really believe that a lot of this comes down to dollars and cents. Like if you have the dollars, it makes sense.
I think with certain players, I do think that's the case with maybe your Johnson and your Madisons, but I do think maybe in Harry Kane's case and Romero's case, trophies do come with it. You do have players that are still motivated by being the best, picking up the best honours and stuff like that. I think in football, what you're seeing now is a lot of players that prefer to follow the money and think following the money, will ultimately bring them to the top. Whereas I believe, you focus on being the best, you focus on trying to claim the big honours, the money will come along with it. But I do think in the likes of Harry Kane and Christian Romero's case, that it is more so, yeah, you can offer them the big wages and great money, but also they will want to know what players are coming in the door to help them match their ambitions.
100%.
When you look at some of the summer transfer windows, we've had, even last summer and this January, none of them signings have convinced Romero that, this club is heading in the right direction and stuff like that. He looks at it, he's probably looking at it and going, you know what, this is only getting worse. You know what I mean? And I think the same with Harry Kane. He stayed longer because of the Jose Mourinho and the Conte factor, to a large degree, hoping that the managers can help as well. But again, if you don't match that up with the right recruitment, I mean, you're not giving any manager, a realistic chance. And when you look at some of the recruitment under Jose Mourinho, absolutely shocking compared to what he gets everywhere else he's been. You know what I mean? And when you're a player like Harry Kane or Romero, and you look at it and you say, okay, we finished 5th last season. Who are we signing this summer to kick on? Then you go out to the K-League, Championship, Swedish second division, stuff like that. While other clubs around you are bringing in players from, from the top 5 leagues, from big clubs and stuff like that. And you're looking at it and going, hang on here. I'm out. Because, you look at it, all of a sudden you go, well, their main objective here is the bottom line. Bringing in young players, developing them, selling them on. I want out. They're not going to win trophies like this. And I think that's what we're seeing in the case of like Romero. But then fans get it misconstrued, and all of a sudden they think, oh, he doesn't want to be here, let him go. It's like ambition of winning trophies. It matches what we want. Should be demanding these guys are kept. We build around these, not roll over so easy and say, let him go, because that's what happened with Harry Kane. Everyone was so, what drove me mad about the Harry Kane situation was everyone goes mad about Daniel Levy lining his pockets and being tight with his money and then wants to fill them with 100 million. You know what I mean? It's absolutely mad. And this is where I think fans need to, step up for their best players more. Demand that these guys are kept at all costs, or there will be a mutiny. And you sign players to keep them here. It's that simple. We want to progress as a football club. That's what needs to happen. Keep selling your best players and watching them go and win elsewhere. And then we sit here moaning about trophies. It's not good enough.
But doesn't one hand wash the other as far as the financial goes? Outside talent looking at Spurs from outside, and they see a dude like Cudi Romero getting paid, or they see a guy like Decky getting paid. That also has to pique interest, right? Knowing that if you're a player like Victor Gyökeres, or you're a player like Jonathan David or Christian Pulisic, looking at the situation and making a decision, and you're seeing that they're taking care of their players, that also has to draw interest from outside the club. Yeah. One hand 100%. Washes the other. You would think, right?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Of course. Other people see that, okay, he's on good money. They've got some good players there. If I can see myself in that team, I can make it better. We can go on and win things. Of course. And what washes, one hand washes the other. Absolutely spot on.
My biggest fear, Derma, is knowing that we do need a right winger and we do need Sonny's replacement and we do need another striker. My biggest fear is knowing that, okay, so Nico Williams would actually solve that problem on the left-hand side, and he would solve it for a good 10 years. My biggest fear is that understanding that Nico might have interest, knowing that the money's there, but instead of getting Nico Williams, they'll settle for a dude like Luka Koleosho who's playing in the championship. That's my biggest fear. That they're going to go down this alternate cheap route.
I really fear we're going to have a bad summer. I really fear we're going to have a bad summer. We're not going to have this brilliant summer that we all think we're going to have. I really fear that is going to be, we're going to sell more than what we're going to buy. And that scares me. That scares the hell out of me. Because if you add the right players into this squad, it can go places. You keep Davis right. You have to keep your best players. You've got to show them ambition. He's spot on with that comment. But I just fear we're going to have a bad season. Lang, for me, offers me no encouragement whatsoever of what we can do this summer. We need players in, and we need them badly. But we're going to go the cheap route. We're going to buy cheap young players, and then it's going to be the same again. And even if it's Akanji, then there's a whole process of the players that we got doesn't suit this manager's philosophy. We'll have to move some of them on. And then he want his players in, and it starts all over again. We can't keep going around in circles, and I just feel this summer is gonna. I just fear this. My gut's telling me this summer's going to be really bad.
We're going to be forced into it, though. It's not like an option. It's not going to be an option. We're going to be forced into it. With no European football to offer players next season, with us finishing 14th in the league, with some of your best players looking around and going, well, I don't back this club in the transfer window either with what they've brought in. Last January, we needed help on the football pitch. They brought in Timo fucking Werner. This summer, we needed help on the football pitch to bring in Dom Solanke, followed by a lot of teenagers. This January, we needed help. They brought in another couple of young players, Baradanzo. You know what I mean? So that automatically they're also going into the summer going, well, am I really going to stick around hoping they have a big transfer window? If they couldn't have one last year, we were worse this year. What makes us think we're going to have a better one? So then all of a sudden you've got the bigger clubs going, well, look, to double your wages, for your Champions League football, come. We're going to be forced into it.
My biggest issue is the catastrophic events and the chain of events that would happen if that ends up happening, if it plays out that way. Because we already started hearing rumors earlier this season, and it started with Radu Dragusin in the first couple months of the season, and then as the season progressed, then we heard Cudi Romero, and now we're hearing Dejan Kulusevski is now being back to leave. The issue that I have is if those events continue to happen, what's going to end up happening is that another summer transfer window will come. Players are going to demand to leave. This roster, what I consider a good roster that is only missing just a few pieces, is going to get blown up. And this thing is going to have a chain of events where Tottenham is going to be in a 10-year cycle of trying to rebuild. Like the effects of a misstep again this summer could have effects where it's going to drag on for 10 years. And not only will this team not be spinning its wheels, but we're also potentially bringing in talks of relegation. That's my biggest fear, Dave.
No, 100%. It's mine. Look, I could see us going that way. When you bring in, like Johnson, Madison, Solanke, Richarlison, Hudaber, all players that have either been relegated or fighting a scrap at the bottom. You're only heading that way. And I think, where we finish where we are, this is where, we have to have really smart recruitment this summer because, yeah, you can rely on picking more players up off the relegation teams, but you're bringing in players with a lack of confidence, hoping to form a team out. And what's really should be happening is that you should be looking at them and saying, he's ready for the next level. Put them into our team. We've got such great players. They'll bring them up to that level and we'll have a good team going forward. But that's not happening. We're bringing in players from relegation clubs and asking them to be the guy. It's absolutely madness. Absolutely madness. And I think this summer, yeah, you can rely on that, but I'm not sure it's going to get you out of a hole. I do think you need to have smart recruitment from other leagues, but I think this is where the Paratici factor comes in. When we didn't have Champions League before, he still managed to get players like Romero's and that to sign on the dotted line and come to this football club. So that's where I think it's imperative that we get this guy back in, because since Johan Lang's come in, club has gone backwards. Look how far we've slided down the league. Yes, there's an element to it that maybe Ange should be getting better out of these out of the squad and that to a certain degree. But there's also a massive element of it that the manager's only as good as the tools that he's got to work with. If the squad ain't great, but then the manager suffers at the end of the day. It's the same with Jose. It was the same with Jose Mourinho. It was the same with Conte. If the squad aren't up to their standards, what do you expect them to do?
Exactly. Dermot, what's your belief on that? What is your belief about this upcoming summer transfer window and the importance with this roster?
As I said before, I just think we're going to have a bad summer. I don't think we're going to spend the money everyone thinks we are. I hope I'm proven wrong. I really hope I'm proven wrong. But I don't think that they're going to want to invest. I feel they're going to buy cheap again. And I don't think they're going to do what they need to do, which is heavily invest in this team, heavily stick by a manager. And I think personally, look, as much as Ange has done, this has been one of them seasons. I think they have to show bottle now. If Dave says they've got to show balls with not selling Harry Kane, I think they've got to do the same with Ange Postecoglou. Stick by him, buy him the players that he needs for his system, back him properly, and then go for it next season. Then if it doesn't work out next season, then fine, go a different route. But you're giving the manager 3 years at the club. And yeah. I just feel that the Daniel Levy and the recruitment team are not going to do that because they've proven again and again they cannot do their job properly. They weren't backed in the summer. They wasn't backed in January. And we're still in the same situation. We're now hearing reports that players want to leave. We've got this leak in the camp. It seems to be Tottenham as a whole seems to be fighting amongst themselves. They're fighting among themselves. And we're not a united club. The fan base is not happy. There's a mole inside the club. Players are not happy. We really are one disjointed club from top to bottom. And the sooner either this takeover happens or somebody comes in with some major investment to say, right, here's money, go out and buy the players Ange needs, the better. But this summer is not going to be this almighty great summer we think we're going to have. I just got this gut feeling we're going to be really disappointed yet again.
The thing is, like money. The money we spend at Tottenham is not the problem, and that's what I think Dick in the chat is trying to allude to there at one point. That money isn't the problem. We do put up money, because he was sitting there saying Andrew was back, which if you just want to look at the money spent and go he's back, yes, but it's deeper than that. You look at the needs, the timing of the transfers that we brought in. For instance, in the January transfer window, right, we spent 10 million to bring Matisse Lettel in here on loan for a couple of months. He was never, ever going to be the solutions to what Tottenham needed at the time. We needed a striker that could come in, bang in goals, send us to a Carabao Cup final, keep us in the FA Cup, fire us up the league whilst maintaining Europe. But we bring in a 19-year-old kid who warms a bench to do that for us. We can sit here and say at the end of the day, the guy was, backed. But backed with what? You know, and this is my whole problem at Tottenham Hotspur. You know, anytime we have a manager, and it was the same under Conte and Joseph, by the way. Look at the money we spent. He's been backed. Yeah, but with what? And that's the thing. Timing. You know, have we brought in what we actually needed? For instance, this summer, we come off the back of a long Destiny Udogie injury that caused us massive problems last summer. You know, Emerson couldn't fill the void, was fucked off out the club. Skip couldn't fill the void, was fucked off out the club. We come in, make him come straight back from surgery, throw him straight back in. Didn't go and buy another fullback. You know, this summer, we needed more, like we finished fifth. You're not too far away. Everyone's talking about winning trophies. You need to go and sign a certain caliber of player, a certain sort of mentality. We head out to the Korean League, Swedish second division, stuff like that, you know. And that's where the money to a large degree is being squandered. You know, you're spending 65 million on Dominic Solanke. You look at how other clubs are spending 65 million around in different leagues in the Premier League. They're spending a lot better than what we are. You know what I mean? And that's where the problem comes in. The money that they put up isn't a problem. They back their managers in terms of putting the money up. But it's the money, it's the way they spend the money for what we need is where the mismatch comes in. And that's where you are failing these managers. You failed Jose Mourinho. Jose Mourinho, okay, yeah, you could argue he's worked at top clubs that give him the best of players. Okay, I understand that. But at the end of the day, you know, stretch a little bit towards his end. Say, look, we can't afford the top end, but we can afford here. They brought in Joe Rodon from fucking Swansea. The guy is known for his defensive system. So that automatically means go in and bring quality defenders in here. They're bringing Joe fucking Rodon. They brought in Ryan Sessegnon. Players that were never, probably ever on Jose Mourinho's radar at any other club he's been at. You know what I mean? Under Conte, don't get me wrong. I love Jed Spence. But you're bringing in a guy that the manager's not going to use. And look at the situation that happened out of it. This is the problem. You know, and then as soon as the manager's under pressure, everyone goes, oh, look at the money we spent underneath him. He's got to make it work. And it's like, you know, we keep protecting the bang average players. And this is what Conte was alluding to when he walked out of this football club. He says, look, you can keep blaming managers. You can keep blaming me. Nothing's going to change if you keep changing managers. You keep changing managers, what's changed? And since then, what's changed since we changed another manager? Absolutely fuck all. Now, I'm not sitting here advocating saying that we shouldn't sack Ange. I think it's come to a point where he's alienated himself with the Spurs fan base, and I think he's got a massive point to prove in the Europa League. And if he doesn't, he will have to go because of his relationship with the fans. But the reality is, we can sit here and we can keep, making everything the manager's problem. And this is where people like Rick don't listen to me, or only listen to what they want to hear or take what they want out of it. Sorry, Dick, but that's the truth. But, my whole point is, this season, everyone's gone after the manager in terms of injuries, not getting the best out of this, not getting the best out of that. And my whole point is, people forget, the manager is not a manager anymore. He's only a head coach. That changed under Pochettino. His day-to-day responsibilities is managing the squad and stuff like that. Every other decisions above that is taken out of his hands, and he has very minimal say in it. And then everyone goes after him all the time. And I think it's a lack of understanding of modern day football and the way the manager's role has changed compared to your Sir Alex Ferguson times and Harry Redknapp times to now and stuff like that. But the reality is, there's much deeper problems inside the club. Everyone automatically goes, injuries this year, that's on Ange Postecoglou. Scott Munn was brought in to try and fucking help redevelop the physio department. Hasn't happened. Players are leaving the club for treatment, which means the physio department. But everyone goes, no, it's down to tactics, down to style of play, this, that, and the other, without taking into account that Pochettino ran the bollocks off these players, but there's no excuses back then or stuff like that. You look how fit Harry Kane was back then compared to when Pochettino left and stuff like that. We just make too many excuses for the wrong people. Look, is Ange becoming a problem? Yes. But let's not hide the fact that the club's transfer policy the last 3 windows have been absolutely shit compared to what the managers needed at the time. Let's not forget the club are also in charge of the physio department, bringing in the right people, the right personnel and stuff like that to keep our players on the pitch. But we hold the manager accountable for all this. And then we wonder why when the next guy comes in, we're here again in 18 months' time and everyone's doing the exact same thing. I can guarantee you now, everything I'm seeing that people are aiming at Ange have already aimed at Conte and Jose Mourinho. I've been in and around, I've been on YouTube around them times. People are saying the exact same thing. They're not making it work. I used to highlight how crap Dyer was. But he's in England internationally. Can't be that bad. He's not making it work. Sanchez. He's a Colombian internationally. Can't be that bad. It's like, man, you're just ignoring the evidence on the football pitch. I mean, it's absolutely mind-boggling. I'm not, like I said, this isn't the defense of Ange, but keep pinning absolutely everything on on the manager and not in these times taking stock of where the club's problem is, the next guy has absolutely zero chance of succeeding.
You know, we're gonna wrap it up just a second, but I will say this because Drew Zilla's in the chat and he's working OT right now, and I appreciate it, Drew. It's good to see you. But a couple weeks ago, he brought up this very interesting point. Excuse me. Since Tottenham Hotspur Stadium has opened, the club has spent over $1 billion in transfers, and so the club themselves are going to say, "Hey, see, like we're doing our job. We're spending. We're doing the things that you have asked us to do, but it's a fugazi, right? It's fake." It's not real. It's an illusion because when you look at the net spend, Dave, compared to the other top 6 clubs, and you look at the weekly wage bill compared to the top 6 clubs, and it shows a wide discrepancy from teams like Newcastle, from teams like Arsenal. It's like their net spend and their weekly wage bills reflect the actual transfer dollar, and the quality of that reflects that on the pitch.
Yep.
Versus Tottenham Hotspur, where it's like, well, wait a second. So you spent $1 billion in transfer budget. Did you just burn it? Is that what we're saying? Because the number is actually reflected in the wage bill, right? The quality of player that you see on the pitch. That's reflected in that $1 billion.
100%. 100%. Like, you look at our wage bill now and we wonder why we are where we are. You know what I mean? It matches up. You know, I think the overlap, we're doing a segment on this the other day where they sort of alluded to it. You know, it's like you look at the wage bill and what they're paying, it sort of matches up where they are this season. You know, ambition has always been Tottenham's problem. You know, paying the money for these players has always been Tottenham's problem to a large degree. You know, you even look at it now, you know, everyone questions why Son only got a contract, extension and not a contract renewal, because he's already at the 200k a week threshold. Daniel Levy notoriously does not want to break that. He doesn't want any players on over 200 grand a week, because once you do that, you've broke the wage structure, and then it opens up other people to come in and, you know, start doing that and stuff like that. And that's why Son has only got a contract extension, you know, and not a contract renewal, because he doesn't want to put him on over 200 grand a week.
Dermot? Nope.
Yeah, I have to agree with Dave with everything he says. I can't disagree. I mean, he took the words right out of my mouth. That's why he's a legend, and I'm just his understudy. But look, go on,
it's
Steve.
Lipstick. I was going to say, because it's lipstick on a pig, Dermot. Right. So it's when you look at these numbers, and it's mind-boggling, right? It's like, oh, okay, well, damn, they spent $1 billion. Okay, so what does that $1 billion
spend it well?
What did that $1 billion? What's the return of investment on that $1 billion? What trophy do we have in our cabinet? That is the reflection of that $1 billion spent. You know what I mean? Like to me, it's money wasted.
It is, and we don't have anything to prove for $1 billion, whatever we've spent.
Euros, $1 billion pounds, $1 billion.
I mean, you look at over that same period, right? You look at the last 3 years, Chelsea has spent 2.9 billion. You look at Man United over the last 3 years spending, they've nearly spent $1 billion themselves. You look at Man City in the last 3-year period, they've spent nearly just under $1 billion. But they've all had one thing. Chelsea haven't. But you look at Man United, they won two trophies in 2 years, a League Cup and an FA Cup. You look at Man City, they've won the Premier League 4 years in a row. They've won the treble. They've bought in players that can win you trophies. We spent money just to keep us getting into the Champions League. That's the height of our ambition, is to finish 4th. And you look at all of these other clubs that have spent big and spent a lot of money, their ambition is to win something. And Dave is damn right. We have not backed any manager. We didn't even back Poch once we reached a Champions League final. And I do know, as much as everyone loves this new stadium and loves this new training facilities and loves this and loves that, I'm sorry, I couldn't give a shit. I don't care. Give me White Hart Lane any day of the week and a team that's going to challenge for the title, instead of spending billions and billions and billions of euros on a feckin' stadium that's got no soul in it. It's got no nothing in it. It's great for NFL games. It's great for concerts. It's great for every other thing. But that you can't put that in your trophy cabinet, can you? No. Because, and I'm just sick of it. I am sick to death of seeing what I have seen. I'm seeing what I'm seeing now. I'm just getting fed up with it. I'm 50 in 2 years. In 2 years' time, I have seen success. I have seen this win trophies. I have seen this lift the European trophy. I've seen this win FA Cups. I've seen this win League Cups. And I'm sick to death of hearing the same bullshit every year, every time it comes out with the money we're leaving. Well, we can't spend within our means. Yes, I was there when we nearly went bankrupt. Yes, I was there when Scholar nearly took this club out of existence. Yes, I was there during the bloody mediocre years of the 90s. But one damn thing, Alan Sugar put his own money in his own pocket, put it into the team. He didn't buy right players, I'll give you that. But he tried. He brought Jurgen Klinsmann to the club. He brought Popescu to the club. He tried. What's Daniel Levy ever tried? Nothing. And when he had a chance to back a manager, to back on from reaching the Champions League final, Tottenham Hotspur, our club, reaching the Champions League final. I never thought I would see the day us reaching the Champions League final.
Only on
and
FIFA.
We lose it. Yeah, only on FIFA, yeah. And we're seeing it real life. There's Daniel Levy. I think you said it the other day, Dave, pumping his fist up in the air with Pochettino after he beat Ajax. That was the time to say, right, Mr. Joe Lewis, give me money to back this manager. What's Joe Lewis said? F you, I'm not giving you a damn right cent. Earn it yourself.
But see,
I'm sorry.
This is where the problem comes in, though, right? You know, you look at the way that the clubs we're trying to compete with, you know, have operated. You know, yeah, there's an element, you know, to their young recruitment, you know, where it's maybe summers off that and having scouts and all. But genuinely, the manager sort of has the say over what players are coming into the football club, and they go after it with ambition. You know, we've brought in a data-led scouting model, which I don't mind to a certain degree. There's a happy medium to have. But we're solely operating off that. We don't look at a player outside that. Like, for instance, Liverpool will have probably something similar in place. But they'll look at an Alisson or a Virgil van Dijk, players that they already know. I need this guy. He'll come in and make a massive difference. There you are. They recruit outside of that as well, and based off the knowledge that they have of players and you know, stuff like that. But you look at Tottenham, we brought in a data-led scouting model. That's where we're using it to sign every single player. And that's where the big problem comes in. You know, you should be using it to make yourself aware of all the young talent coming up in different leagues and all that sort of stuff. 100%. But we've gone to the point where we're like a Brighton and a Brentford now. You know, that's where this model has come from. You know, their owners, you know, the two of them used to be at one football club together, and they've come up with this whole, they're betting, they own betting companies, and they've come up with this whole system, and it's called a data-led scouting model, which basically, when you look at Brentford and Brighton, they very rarely ever go wrong with their recruitment. A lot of it is always hit. You know, when you look at the money that they're signing and the output they're getting, and that's all based off these data-led scouting models between Brentford and Brighton. We brought that into Tottenham, and we wonder why we are where we are. You know, it's okay to have a data-led scouting model to, you know, pull players in off the beaten path and pull some bargains in. But you should also be going off of that and going, I like what I look at. I like the look of this guy. I like what he's all about. We need to bring him in. You don't need the data-led scouting model for absolutely every signing. You know, if you want to catch the likes of Man City's and Liverpool's and stuff like that, you have to come off that and go, he's a great player. We need to get him in at this football. There's an opportunity to make that happen. Make it happen. But what we do is we go, what's he good at? Straight into the computer, or we'll head out to, you know, Venezuela. We'll bring this guy in for a 500k and he'll do the job. But what you don't get is the same mentality. The player already at that level compared to a player that has to learn and stuff like that. And that's where the problems come in. You know, we are literally just operating off the data-led scout model, and that is it. We need to be looking off that and looking at like what Liverpool done with Alisson and Van Dijk. You know, they sold Coutinho, raised the money, brought in them two players that never looked back since, you know, and that's where we lack. You know, we get that 100 million. Let's put it into the scout model. Let's see what we can bring up. And we wonder why we are where we are with Brighton and Brentford.
Drew Zilla in the chat brings up this thing, and it was where I was going to head into. It says, I got to give Adrian props for those stats. One thing I will say about wages, especially this season, it looks worse because we paid off Ndombele and sold Kane, etc., and brought in players on a third, which leads me to that next question is, if we're a top six club, why aren't we competing as a top six club with the other top six clubs? right? Because when you look at the numbers and you look at the net spend and you look at the wages, it doesn't show us as a team competing within a top six status. It almost feels like we're competing with the Fulhams of the world. We're competing with the Brightons and the Southamptons. Well, maybe not Southamptons, but you get what I'm saying. The Bournemouths of the world, the West Hams, mid-table teams, competing for mid-table supremacy. Like that's what it look. That's what I look at. I look at the money that's raised. I look at the players that come in. I look at the wage sheet, and I'm like, are we really a top six club? Because we're certainly not competing as one.
We're not anymore. I mean, you even look at Aston Villa, right? This is where my huge concern comes in with Johan Lang. They literally got rid of him because he couldn't bring the players in that Unai Emery was looking for to kick on. Unai Emery is an experienced manager. He's been around the block, and he knows there's a certain caliber of player that you need to kick on. Look how many things he won at Sevilla in terms of UEFA Cups and stuff like that. He knows what you need to do. So they got rid of him. They went out to Sevilla and said, how much, Munchie? We need to bring you into Villa. Look at their recruitment now. Essentials, players like that. Players that we should have been in the market for in January, And then all of a sudden we bring in Johan Lang and look at our recruitment. Like, don't get me wrong. I understand that, you need to get your manager right. But recruitment also has to come hand in hand with it. And you look at Villa and how much they've went to appease Unai Emery. They brought in Unai Emery. They've said he's a guy that knows how to win. He knows how to deliver trophies. What do we need to put in place? He's gone, director of football ain't good enough. No problem. We'll change that. That will then in turn change our recruitment, bring in better players, which you will see a better output. And then all of a sudden we pick up the scraps. Oh, we'll bring in Johan Lang. Without questioning why Aston Villa got rid of him. And look where they are now, and look how far they've kicked on, and look how far we've dropped. And that's why I do keep harping on about the recruitment. It's not only the manager. The manager isn't just Harry Houdini, where he can come in and just all of a sudden go, right, you're crap, but now I'm here, you're going to be of a certain technical ability. It doesn't work like that. A manager has to have the right players to work with if you want to go and compete. And that's where the problem comes in. And that's why I have a huge problem with someone like Johan Lang. I look when Villa have got rid of him and where they've kicked on to, and when we've brought him in and where we've fallen to, he's a massive part of the issue.
I mean,
go ahead, Dermot.
This goes back to when Steve Hitchen was in charge as well, by the way. This all goes back to when Steve Hitchen goes back. We had the same thing under Steve Hitchen. Paratici came in with Gabardini and rebuilt the transfer network, rebuilt the scouting network, and it was working. And you look at the transfers we brought in, the players we brought in under Paratici and Gabardini. They were good players. The first season Paratici is in, bought in Kulu and bought in Decky and Bentancur. Then you look at the summer we had. Then you look at the Mickey van der Vens and the Vicarios and the them players he brings in. You look at the summer Lang's just had with Scott Munn. It's like going back to the Steve Hitchen years. And how many times, Dave? I mean, we were. I think we just started our channels back under Steve Hitchen. How many times did we back then in them days moan and complain about Steve Hitchen and the crap job? And he never gets the stick he deserves.
Well, I certainly did. At the time, people went after.
We both did, yeah.
People went after like Conte and Jose, and
yeah.
I didn't. I brought up Steve Hitchen. I brought up how much he spent, what he spent it on, and like this is my thing. Jose and Conte aren't bad managers, but they didn't even see out second season.
No.
You know what I mean? And this is my whole point. We're not bringing bad managers to this football club, even Nuno to a degree. Look what Nuno's gone on to do. But all of a sudden we as fans get fooled into, they're the problem, without looking at actually other aspects and going, right. And actually having a bit of balance in this situation and going, okay, yes, he hasn't made it work. Yes, you can question, is he up to the Premier League level with the best managers in the world being in the league and stuff? You can question that.
Yeah,
but also go, well, why didn't it work out? Where have things gone wrong? And that's where I think that's where it brings you into the club, and you've got to take stock of what the club's done wrong. Because, if the club wasn't the problem, Jose Mourinho would have worked out. We would have got the same results out of him that everybody else got. Same with Antonio Conte. But we haven't. We're the anomaly on the CV. And a lot of it comes down to the director of football. I do think it's a modern day problem. You hear the likes of Sam Allardyce and David Moyes, I've listened to them do recent podcasts, and they've been asked about, this. And they basically said, look, everyone's still under the illusion that we're bringing in the players as managers. We're not. You know,
No.
you've got director of footballs bringing in players, you know, and sometimes you go, why have you brought in this guy? And it's like, well, you know, we want to bring him in, make it work, you know, and then all of a sudden they're left there to pick up the pieces. And it's not fair. Like, you go back and you look at what David Moyes got out of Everton when he was making the decisions on transfers. They were in the Champions League. You know,
Yeah.
you go back to Bolton and what Sam Allardyce done at Bolton,
Yeah,
bringing in
exactly.
likes of JJ Okocha, Yorkayev and everything else, because they were players that he identified to bring in. Look where he brought Bolton to, the heights of Bolton, you know. But now what you're doing is you're bringing in a manager and going, basically, you're just a glorified head coach. This guy who doesn't really actually know anything about managing a football club, managing players or anything like that, he's going to pick your players. And that's what you're seeing happening. And I think that's wrong to a large degree. I'm not being funny, but you look at Man City. Pep Guardiola is in control of every player that leaves that club and every player that walks in. And we wonder why they win. You know?
A manager is only good as the players he's got around them. A manager is only good, and it's down to the recruitment team. And we had that under Paratici and Gabardini that brought in players that suited a system. They were good players. You look at Mickey van der Ven. Do you know, you look at Romero, you look at Vicario, you look at Porro, you look at Destiny Udogi, you look at, you know, Jed Spence when he was brought in under Conte. And players, we do have a good squad, but it's just the whatever it is, Lang is not good at his job. So please just sack the fucker. Sack him, sack Scott Monk, bring back Paratici and Gabardini. Let them do what they did. And the other problem is, Levy gets involved. He's only supposed to be a chairman. Let the manager manage. Let the director of football do his job. Let the sporting director do his job. You just do your job. Just supply the money. Give them the money to buy the players that suits the manager's system. But again and again, we don't do this.
I will say this. I will say this one more time because it bears spurring. The best attribute a director of football can have is the relationship that he has with his manager. Because the last thing you want is a director of football that's trying to build a team that doesn't even suit his manager. You're fitting a square peg into a round hole, and that's exactly what we have going on right now. It doesn't seem like those two are even remotely on the same page. Like, Ange has a certain profile and attribute of a player that actually fits a system, and then what we see in the summer transfer window doesn't even remotely reflect that. And you know, and again, people are wondering why we're fading so far down to the table. Well, that's that. Well, we're going to finish up with this last question, and it pertains to Sunday. So we're gonna finish on this. Go ahead.
Just before you move on, I want to take Paul Tucknot's.
I was going to do the same as well.
I understand what you're saying. At the end of the day, what price have they paid? You know, they can keep. The only reason why they're pretending to do all these investigations and all is to stop the government taking over. You know, having what's the government looking to do? Can't remember the exact wording for it.
They're looking to bring in a company to run football. They're looking to bring in an organisation
and stuff like that.
Yeah,
to make sure.
That's
the only reason why they're doing it. It's all
you're saying. You're saying a private company to regulate football in England?
Yeah, it's a regulation.
The government want to bring in a regulator for football.
But isn't the FA in charge of regulating football in England?
Yeah, but I think, you know, basically, you know, there's been calls now for the government to get involved in that because of the, you know, but basically that's why they're pretending to go about all this, is to keep away, you know, the government taking it over and putting people in place as basically a watchdog. That's why they're pretending. You know, nothing's been done of it. You know, they've been investigating City for how long, and how many trophies have they picked up in the meantime and stuff like that. You know, you look at the clubs that have been punished, the likes of Everton. They're the clubs they're continually going to punish because they offer little, you know, in terms of finances and everything else. They're never ever going to punish these big dogs. You know, never ever. And look, I get what he's saying, but at the end of the day, this is where people's frustrations come in. Like, don't get me wrong, I like the fact that we're self-sustainable to a degree. But there does come a time where you have to go, do you know what? Just for this year, I don't mind putting ourselves in a little bit of red, you know, for the sake of a little bit of ambition. And that's what we don't do. That's what them clubs do. They find a way to circumvent the rules, knowing that they're never, ever going to be done for it, and they get success.
And also Chelsea being looked into because they sold the women's team to themselves for 200 million. and the Premier League let that go, but UEFA are looking into that to see if they've broke any rules. I get the.
They already done it with the hotel, didn't they? Though,
Yeah,
didn't
they
the guy
did.
already
Yeah,
sell a hotel? You know, like
yeah.
the thing is, if they didn't get done for that, they're not going to be done for the selling
No,
of Wolves.
I agree. I agree what Paul's saying. Paul is saying it's true. Villa is spot on in what he's saying. But look, just a bit. You've got Chelsea being looked in UEFA because they sold the women's side to themselves to get themselves out of PSR and FFP dilemma with the Premier League for 200 million. So they basically just sold the company to themselves. City are being done for what they're being done for, and I don't think they're going to get as big as. I think they're going to get a fine. That's about it. Because also the
Might
people that own.
That's it.
No, they won't even get that because the people that own Man City also bring in all and that to the government in the UK. So there's links within
there's Saudi
government.
relationships between relationships between the English government as far as import and export. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So there will be. That's why they're only going to get a fine. Paul makes it. The problem is the Premier League and the FA don't know how to. If they were to look after their own league, none of this would happen. The FFP and PSI rules are absolutely stupid and need to be looked at again and need to be put in properly. There's so many loopholes within the FFP and PSR. It's unreal. I mean, there's more leaks in that than Tottenham have. So, you can't blame clubs for trying to pull a fast one. But we have to, as a club, have to say, do you know what? We can spend up to 300 million. Fuck it, let's do it. If we're going to go into the red wall 1 year, Man City, Aston Villa have wages up to 95% against their, PSR.
That will have to come down.
No, that will. But look where they are. They're in the FA Cup semi-final. They're in the quarterfinals of the Champions League. And they may not qualify for Euro. But at least they're giving it a go. We never give it a go. We stay there and think, we just spend within our means. I don't give a shit. At least Ivan Scolanelli took our club to the brink of extinction. But at least he bloody give it a go. I hate the guy, and I think he's the biggest force to this side of the Irish Sea. But at least he gave it a go. But Levy, he's a businessman, not a football man. He just needs to go. Just go, Levy, go.
So what you're saying is corruption isn't just exclusive to Ireland and the United States. Fair enough. I got you. All right, so we're going to finish on this because we have a match on Sunday, and it's at Molineux against Wolves. I don't know how you guys feel. To me, this has trap game written all over it, right? On paper, this looks like a match where Tottenham pretty much has the advantage when it comes to talent. But that being said, as we've seen this year, especially against Leicester City and Ipswich and some of these other bottom feeders, that talent necessarily hasn't prevailed. I got a feeling that we're going to see some rotation, considering we're off the back of that match. We have the second leg in Germany. First and foremost, Derma, how do you see the squad looking for Sunday, and also what's your predictions there?
Well, I'm just looking at the score for the Man City game. They were 2-0 down. Now Man City are winning 3-2. So that's a cracking game.
Hang on, was Ricky not in the chat praising Glasner there a second ago? I wonder how Ricky feels about that now.
Yeah, he was actually in the chat. Yeah, it was. Big up to Dickie Ricky. Well done, sir. I'm glad you got banned.
Dickie Ricky has been put on timeout, by the way.
Good. I was just, he was just.
I don't like doing it. I don't like doing that, by the way.
Let him have his opinion.
Well, I don't like doing that, but that being said, when you become a disruptive force to the other people in the chat, when they're just trying to have a good conversation and you just have some dude just throwing wrenches and everything, like, I'm going to put you on timeout. I don't like to do it because I like people expressing their opinions 100%. But when you become a detriment to other people that are just looking to be on the conversation, that's when I have a problem.
Look, for me tomorrow, I think there will be changes. Of course, there will be changes. There's gotta be some sort of thing. But look, out of 21 games, Tottenham have won, 5 away. We've only won 5 times at the Molineux in 21 games in the Premier League. But we always have struggled there. I mean, our last win at Molineux was, before August 22. But look, I think we're going to win. I think we're going to win 3-0. I think we're going to go up there and do a job. I mean, this is just delusional me talking. I think we're going to win. I think we're going to win well. There will be changes. But I think we're going to get 3 points. We're going to continue on from the beating Southampton, the good feel factor in the league, and we're going to end the season well. So I'm going for a 3-0 win. I'm going for Spurs to spank the Wolves and have a bit of Wolves pie. I fancy a bit of that on Sunday evening, mashed potato and gravy and peas. And run on to Thursday when we're going to beat Frankfurt as well. So, yeah, come on, you Spurs. The future is bright. The future is lily white. Come on, you Spurs.
Mashed potatoes, gravy, and peas. I'm down for the mashed potatoes, but
a bit of wolf pie. There you go. I could see Dave. I could see Dave's already starting thinking. I could see by his face. That's not bad. I'll have some of that.
By the way, what's wolf pie?
Wolves.
Oh yeah. Okay, I got you. Dave.
I actually got this off Dave. Dave used to do this quite a lot, and I've sort of. I love it when Dave says it, so I sort of nicked it off him. So it's quite funny.
I thought it was like a first cousin to like a mince pie or something like that. I was
no.
So Dave, Wolves are coming into this one off three wins. They're coming into inform. They don't have any European play or any cup play where they have to extend their roster. That being said, as Dermot just alluded to, the fact that they have an advantage over Spurs at Molineux. What's your feeling about this match on Sunday?
Do you know, it's a hard one to call because there's 7 games left of the Premier League, and Wolves are pretty much safe now. They're 12 points above the relegation zone, 7 games left. You'd like to think they're not going to be caught, but at the same time, I don't think they're going to let up anytime soon. I think they'll look at, beating Tottenham as an ideal opportunity to properly secure, themselves in the Premier League for next season. So, I think they're going to be up for it. You look at their last 3 results, beat Ipswich, beat West Ham, beat Southampton, teams you'd argue they should be beaten anyway. It's not like they've pulled off, a result against Man City or Arsenal and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, they seem to be turning a little bit of a corner, and I think the motivation will be there to beat Tottenham. I think everyone fancies beating Tottenham right now, which is a huge problem. We're not going into these games with the fear factors or asking them to, be on the back foot. That's the problem. They all fancy beating us. We sort of motivate them before we even, blow the whistle to get the game going to a large degree. So it's not going to be easy. And just in general, my whole lifetime, Wolves have always given us a good game, whether it's home or away. I remember, when we had Super Pav and Robbie Keane up front, back at the Molineux under Mick McCarthy. I think it was a Pavlyuchenko screamer that either won or got us, a point on the day. I remember under Jose Mourinho, wasn't it? Jan Vertonghen last-minute header, that ended up winning us the game and stuff like that. They notoriously give us a good game. I went over there, my first game into the new stadium at home. Wolves bet us 2-0 that day. You know what I mean? So Wolves have always given us a good game. We've always struggled against them. So I'm not going to go into this game thinking we're going to slap them up. And I don't think we're in the form either to be able to walk in and just 100%. Play this cohesive football to slap them up. I think it's going to be a dogfight, to be quite honest with you. One that maybe Wolves might be a little bit more up for. Like if I'm the Wolves manager, I'm saying to my team, make it scrappy. They've got a game on Thursday night. They will pull out certain challenges. They will not want that fight. Make it scrappy. That's how we win this game. So I think that's the way the game's going to go, personally. But I never back against my team, so despite the rotational changes, I'm going to go with a 2-1.
It's because of that. That's why I don't think we're going to see heavy rotation. I think we will see some. I can see Jed Spence getting back into the lineup, and I can see maybe Lucas Bergvall being dropped from the starting lineup. But that being said, it's also a situation where Ange Postecoglou kind of needs 3 points. This is not the type of game where you have heavy rotation and it's just like, well, whatever, wherever the chips fall, it is what it is. It's understanding that yes, Thursday is a massive fixture, but that being said, this weekend is also equally as important, and he can't drop the ball. That's why I kind of think we're going to see some of the mainstays that are going to be playing in this match at Molineux. At least they're going to give themselves a good opportunity to try to win this match. I don't know, man. That's the thing. It's like I really want to back this team, but a big part of me thinks that this is going to be a draw. I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna say it's going to be a 1-1 draw.
Look, very well could be. Very well could be. These games with Wolves are always tight and they're always scrappy.
Yeah.
Be 1 goal either way or a draw. I think you're spot on.
Yeah. Well, that's going to do it for us. And I do want to thank you, Dave, for taking time out. I know that you have plans today, so we're going to let you get onto those plans. And Derma, thank you again for joining us as well too. I think you and I have a show today as well too. So there's definitely going to be there's going to be some work in the pipeline. So Dave, quickly before you go, what's the Irish Hotspur schedule coming up?
We've got the pre-match build-up tomorrow at 11, and then, watch along then at 1:30, and then take it from there. Hopefully we can get the win and, have a good feel factor heading into Frankfurt. I think momentum, is important heading into Frankfurt, even if we do make changes. So hopefully we can get the job done. But yeah, that's what's going on over there. But I think there's been up to nearly 10 people tuning in here today at points, which is very good for a channel that's getting going. So, if anyone has ventured over and, has enjoyed the conversation of that, make sure you subscribe to Steve. I really like him. I've got a good time from him. I know Dermot does, Drew does, Adrian and that does. So make sure you show him the love here, please.
I appreciate that. And Dermot, what's going on TID? Till I die. What's going on the channel?
We've got to come on THFC Till I Die. We've got the pre-match tonight with you and James coming on. Look forward to that. We've got the pre-match, then looking ahead to the game tomorrow. Then we've got the watch along from 1:30. Then we've got final score afterwards, which you do, Steve, which I'm looking forward to doing. And then there'll be a few pre-records out today, predicted lineup, and also on Monday there will be a new pre-record coming out on this day in history, where I go over what happened to Tottenham on that specific day. That's going to be a pre-record. So that starts on Monday. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. Something I really love is the history side of Spurs and looking back at the good old days. But I'm pleased to. I echo what Dave said. There's been 10 or 11 people in there. If you haven't subscribed already, it's a great channel. And I've got a lot of time for him as well. He's a lovely man, a proper gentleman. And please come over. Let's get this channel up to 500 as quickly as we can.
I've never been described as a proper gentleman. That's actually quite nice of you, Dermot. I want to thank Wayne Bonner, and I want to thank Paul Tucknut, Carl Simpson, Drew Zilla. I want to thank all those that have taken the time to drop into the chat. I definitely appreciate it. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. As tonight, we also have an MLS live stream kicking on at 8:30. The Seattle Sounders versus the vaunted FC Dallas. So definitely tune into that at 8:30 for a little MLS watch along. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. And of course, over on THFC TID for the Sunday match versus Wolves and all the pre-match and post-match along with that as well too. So there's definitely a lot going on this weekend. Dave, thank you again. And, hopefully we'll see you soon. Derma, we'll see you in just a few minutes. Everybody, you guys have a wonderful weekend. I hope everything works out well for you guys and just enjoy this weekend. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
On you Spurs.